content validity. So I made something to help clarify that difference, okay? Basically took all the notes for you yesterday and made them into like better notes. So on Canvas, if you ever want this, it's called Reliability and Types of Validity Cheat Sheet. And so I kind of took the bubble metaphor that I got the other day and ran with it. Okay, so it looks like this. At the top, I just did a little quick thing on reliability, definitions, and the ways of measuring reliability. But then down here, I did a more in-depth thing with validity. So the bubble is supposed to represent whatever it is you're measuring, like you're trying to measure. So if you're on the SAT, you're trying to measure like academic abilities, right? Maybe you're trying to measure like how much food someone can eat in 2 hours, whatever you're measuring, okay? And then I kind of use the bubble to show a visual representation. So in each little thing, we have the description of when something has that type of validity. It looks like this. So I underlined that part. And then I kind of explained why I filled in the bubble the way I did for each of them. So that kind of explains the visual metaphor to you. And there's always an example. So for content, I have what it looks like when it has content, what it looks like when it lacks content validity, okay? Construct, when it has construct validity, 2 examples on this one. And then what it looks like when it lacks content validity with also 2 examples. Okay, and then down here we've got predictive validity, which I think wasn't a problem for many of you, but just in case it was, that exists down there for you too. So if you were feeling confused about those, that might help you. And that's on Canvas for you to look at whenever. I just thought that might be nice to have because I was getting confused just because like they're both so similar in name, like construct and content. I don't like that. Name them something different. And then the final thing we're gonna do is it's almost time for us to register for AP tests. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add you all to one giant class. Mr. Henderson's class and then my 3 classes are all gonna be in one. It will automatically sign you up for the test and you have to opt out if you do not want to take the test. Okay, so we're going to get to opting out later. I don't think we're doing that today, but we do just want you in the class so that you're in it, okay? So that's the code. The website is here. It's myap.collegeboard.org. I know it's really small. I could try to write it somewhere a little bit bigger. Yeah, sure. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, and then the code is here, just in case I have to switch the screen. I think that's all my house. Kira. Where's Kira? We're here. Gosh, she's been gone 3 days in a row. Talia's not here. You guys know where Talia is? Okay. It just wasn't marked down, so I wasn't sure. If for some reason you don't get this to work, it's also on Canvas in that important things module. It's posted, it has the code, it has the website, okay? It's a little shorter. Yes, okay. It's a little bit shorter. Yeah, that's fine.
It grows faster.
Well, I got it cut for weddings. I was growing it out for weddings. So now it's okay. So we're gonna switch gears here. That website and the code is still up there if you're still doing that. So there is legislation saying that I'm not allowed to teach racial bias. However, that does not count if you took an elective AP class. And this is one of the standards that the AP class wants, it's in the standards, so I literally have to teach it to you. So if anyone's mad, I'm required to teach this to you. So with that disclaimer out of the way. The SAT, we're gonna assess whether it's racially biased today because we have to talk about culture fair tests, and a lot of other vocab words that have to do with that. So we're gonna look at that. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to discuss the meaning of these terms. The first one though, I'm gonna give to you because I don't think it was in your reading and I had to do a deep dive into the internet, Googling the term, to figure out what it was because it wasn't in my notes either. So the intelligence gap refers to, it's a trend in intelligence testing, so IQ testing, where historically, Black people who have taken the IQ test have scored 15 points lower than white people who have taken the IQ test. And that's without any discrepancies in any other categories. So they're the same age, same gender, all that. They've compared really, really similar people with that being the only discriminating factor, and it's still different. And there's a good explanation for why that is. That's just sort of the systematic piece of it. But it is getting smaller. So in the last couple decades, it's kind of begun to shrink. So we are seeing that decrease. Does that help you understand what that is? So it's a gap in quotation marks because it's measured IQ. So it's not we know that IQ is not the be all end all of intelligence. We learned that the other day. But that's why it's gap in parentheses. The other three I'd like you to discuss in your groups. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do so and just try to define the other three based on what you would have read last time. Okay?
Yeah, but we're supposed to be doing something right now. You
We don't have a student.
Oh, you mean for the
Yeah.
I don't think they you have a we have access to that. I did not know my standard stereotype. I think that might be like a first
No, actually, that's yeah, basically take based on any stereotype that you're biased test.
So it's like, historically, they got like, it'd be identical to the racist they made. But it's
He's gonna beat, so if you don't like timers, heads up. Really quickly, let's go over these. I didn't do that with second hour, and I think it's a good thing that we can do. So stereotype threat, what are they talking about when they talk about stereotype threat? Yeah, Maggie?
It's like, when there's a stereotype about you or like what kind of person you are, and because of that stereotype, like the stereotype says like, oh, you're bad at this, or oh, you aren't smart, and you believe that, and you like play into the stereotype, and that causes you to do worse.
Right, and it's specifically if someone were to remind you of the stereotype about you before you took the test, it would decrease your performance on the test. So like if you weren't reminded of the stereotype, you would do however you would normally do on the test. But if someone was like, here's that stereotype about you, remember, you're not that smart, then you would do worse. That's stereotype. Start. Bias tests. That one's not explicitly like a vocab term in your reading, but I'm guessing that most of you can tell me what a bias test is. Yeah.
It's like, if like some of the content on the test is like kind of written so that only certain people will like be able to answer it well.
So it's geared towards certain people. And we talked about, I think the other day, the analogy that used regatta as a question on the SAT. And it was just, that's just such a specific word to like East Coast upper class culture that a lot of people didn't know how to answer that question on the test. So I mean, that one isn't even racially biased, it's just location biased and class biased. So it is possible to have different types of bias, but it's just something that unfairly relates more to one group than another. And then culture fair tests, or test items, what do those look like? Culture fair tests look like. It's the opposite of the last one. Like you're yeah. Yeah.
It's like if the questions don't rely on any like cultural knowledge.
Right. If the questions don't rely on any cultural knowledge. And it's hard to do. It is very hard to write culture fair tests because there's a lot of stuff about any culture that kind of trickles into whatever you're talking about. So it is very, very hard to write those tests. So we're gonna do the same thing we did yesterday, essentially. We're gonna look at a reading. One has a pro, like believes that the SAT is racially biased. One has that they believe that the SAT is not racially biased. So there's two articles just like yesterday, same codes, question, star, underline. To be clear, when you're underlining something, I'm not asking you to look for the exact word in the text. If you see something that talks about like, oh, they told these people before they took the test that they weren't as smart, you underline that sentence and you can say that's a stereotype threat. So it's more about identifying the words using context clues. Okay. You can find the reading in the same place you would have found it yesterday, except on Friday instead of Thursday. So it's the SAT and race reading. Okay. Right, and you can click on that. And when you click on that, it'll pull up this. So it says evidence of racial bias in the SAT and then in defense of the SAT. Okay. So I'm going to give you 7 minutes to do this. The timers are broken again. So that's going to give us until 58. So 10:58. Both of you. 15 seconds. Okay, so we're gonna spend what time is it? 20? Okay. We're gonna spend another 7 minutes working on this portion of it. So it's the same, again, the same thing we did yesterday. We're just updating everything with new information. So you're gonna do a discussion and debate at your table, which will be share if you had a question, someone at your table answer it. And then after that, you're going to debate. And the question that you're gonna debate is the SAT irrevocably racially biased? So is it like past the point of saving, sort of linking up with should we keep it or get rid of it? Or can we fix it? Okay, so that's what you're trying to address. If you could try to use these vocab terms, that would be great. Intelligence gap, stereotype threat, bias tests, and culture share tests. So I'll let you do that. That means we come back at 11:06. Okay, you got 30 seconds to wrap up your debate. Okay. So here's what you're gonna do with the rest of the class, which is about 14 minutes. So the letter to the editor that you wrote yesterday, you're gonna add to your argument based on our discussions today. If in fact you disagree with what you said yesterday, like you've changed your mind, you might have to revise a little bit of what you did yesterday, and that's fine. I'm not saying you have to rewrite the whole thing, but maybe just like fix it a little bit so it reflects more of your current viewpoint. You don't want to send in a letter to the editor that's like weird and two opinions. If you agree with what you said yesterday though, you're just gonna add on to the end, okay? So you need to add probably about a paragraph about race, and that will bring you up to really a good size letter to the editor. If you did 2 paragraphs yesterday. And I want you to pick 3 of these vocab terms to use in that section, okay? So you've got 3 from yesterday and 3 from today. And I'll put the Canvas instructions up here because it has both days' instructions so that you have like a full picture of what it's gonna look like. Okay? Any questions about what you're doing with that? No? Fabulous. And this one, like the one that you did on, that we did something that you turned, the intelligence reflection, both are going into the grade book as classwork, so they're part of that 15% of your grade.